Joining us now, the Democratic member of the Intelligence Committee, Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado. Senator, thanks for being with us. Are you confident this now moves through the Senate when it got through that long, months-long process in the House?
Thanks for having me back. We've talked about this so many times over the last 6 or 8 months on this program, and for the first time, Willie, I can say I'm confident that this is going to get through the Senate, that the United States is going to fulfill our mandate as the leading democracy in the world to support not just Ukraine's fight for democracy, but frankly, the entire Western world's fight against Putin and against Xi Jinping. This is actually a great day in American history for democracy and obviously a great day for the Ukrainian people who have earned the support of the world.
So, Senator, I know it's not your chamber, but I'm curious what you make of, just in the last week or so, Speaker Johnson really changing his tenor and his tone and his approach to all of this and just saying, the MAGA extremists who want to kick me out of my job, go ahead, have at it. We're going to get this funding to Ukraine. And interesting to hear, even former President Trump, when given some bait yesterday to attack Speaker Johnson, said, well, he's got a tough job. He's a good guy. I understand why this was a hard thing for him, almost calling off his MAGA folks. What do you make of that flip? Why did Speaker Johnson come around in the end?
I hope that he realized that probably your average American couldn't pick out a speaker from a lineup in American history, but that he would be remembered very poorly if he was the guy that lost Ukraine. I do think this is also a very important moment when we are standing up against the isolationists in the Republican Party, the so-called America Firsters that are aligned with Donald Trump. We remember those guys, they called themselves the first, did the same thing when before World War II. They disgraced themselves on the pages of history back then. They've disgraced themselves on the pages of history again. And I think the Speaker has decided that he's going to turn his back on that, in part because the American people are standing with the Ukrainian people who have shown what it looks like to be willing to die for democracy.
Yeah, and John Heilemann, the senator, is exactly right. Nazi sympathizers, 37, 38, 39, 40, talked about being America Firsters. I'd love for you to ask a senator a question. I just want to ask you one first. Do you have any insights into Speaker Johnson? What caused the move for him to make the move to a traditional Reagan-esque Republican or Brzezinski worldview?
I think, Joe, that there are a couple things. One of them is the thing that Michael Bennet just said just now, which is that the politics of this were pretty clear. He made a move, and I don't want to diminish the political courage it took to stand up to the MAGA right for Speaker Johnson, but he basically got behind a bill that was overwhelmingly popular within his own caucus, obviously on the Democratic side, in the country. That is a thing that he should have been there all along. And again, I don't want to take away anything from him making the right decision and ending up where he ended up in the camp you talked about. But the politics of this were pretty clear on the broader level. I also think he started to realize that maybe the challenge that he faced to his speakership by the far-right flank was not as serious as some people kind of attributed to it. There was this notion that, well, if Marjorie Taylor Greene turns against him, he might lose his speakership. I think he started to look at that and said, maybe I can make it through here. He might be right, he might be wrong, but I think his judgment of the threat to his tenure shifted a little bit over that time. And that's, I guess, a question I wanted to kind of turn the question back to you, Senator Bennet. I guess in the long run, do you think, and I know you're not a Republican and you don't specialize in analyzing Republican caucus politics, but in the long run, do you think that this works is this a cross that he's going to end up dying on, Speaker Johnson, or is this a thing that you think in the long run is good politics for him and for the Republican Party if they can get to the place where they see the Ukrainian effort the same way you do?
Well, I think it is good politics for him. And as I was leaving the airport on Saturday morning on my way back to Colorado, I actually saw Speaker McCarthy coming through the airport, coming in the other direction. And I was thinking to myself, this guy was incapable of doing anything that was hard. He was incapable of doing anything that lasted because he was so terrified of his right wing. John Boehner, whom I like a lot and think is actually a good guy, looks back at his speakership and says the worst thing he did was not put the immigration bill that I was part of that gang of 8 that negotiated that on the floor for a vote. And maybe Johnson has shown that you don't have to allow the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world to lead this country around by the nose when it comes to fundamental questions of life and death, fundamental questions about how this democracy is going to show up. And John, that would be a good thing for America, if we were turning the page on that, and credit to Speaker Johnson if that's what's happened. I also want to say that President Biden has led extremely well, extremely resolutely from the day that Putin invaded Ukraine to begin with, from the day that the Ukrainians were basically fighting Putin off with their bare hands. Joe Biden was there to say we've got to organize NATO. We've got to organize the Western world. I just got back from South Korea, from Tokyo, and in these places, they're all saying, you guys better deliver on Ukraine because Xi Jinping is watching what you're doing. I think Joe Biden's leadership has helped in this season for the United States.
It really has. Thank you so much, Democratic member of the Intel Committee, Senator Michael Bennet. Greatly appreciate it. New York Times had, I think, a pretty remarkable story about how